Max Baucus is the longest serving Montana state senator, U.S. senator for Montana, also the former ambassador for the United States to China. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us.
You bet, Kevin.
All right, I got to ask you just the visceral gut reaction when you heard of the passing of Senator McCain.
A new era is going to begin, and it's not necessarily going to be good. John represented what's best, I think, in public service. That is, he really cared. He did what he thought was right. There was no guile, not a bone of deception in his body. He was a straight shooter.
I keep hearing that from people, whether they're politicians or just Joe Average on the street, that they said they don't always agree with him, they didn't always agree with him, but at least you knew where he was coming from. There was no mistaking it.
And I think that's partly because of his military background. You know, his grandfather was an admiral, he was in the Navy, and his dad was an admiral, and so there's a real military tradition. He went to Annapolis, and he was a midshipman, got imbued with the Navy doctrine. It's really kind of in his DNA. And that became sort of a badge of honor. It's almost like a code of conduct. And so you say what you think, that is when you get out. He couldn't say everything he thought when he was in the military, but once he got out, he could be more free in his thoughts, and he did. But because he was so passionate and believing what he believed in, that's why people remember, I think, that he's a man that spoke his word, and he meant what he said. He wasn't somebody who was laid back, easygoing,
okay,
a wallflower, who may have always thought he did the right thing, but nobody knew about it. Well, they know about it because of John McCain, because he spoke up.
The other thing you hear a lot these days when it comes to Senator John McCain was, yes, he was a Republican, but he was able to work across the aisle. You were across the aisle for many years with him. Would you agree with that?
I'd agree with that, but to be candid, I was chairman of the Senate Finance Committee for many years. It's involved in economics and you know, Montana policy, tax and trade and healthcare and so forth. And John was more a military man. He was very involved in the Armed Services Committee that he chaired, and spoke truth to power, spoke up to the Pentagon. He could do that. He had credibility. He had chops. A lot of people couldn't speak to the Pentagon openly and as freely as he. So the work that we had, John and I, was more limited, because he went one path, military, national security and so forth. I was more American sort of economic security. Okay. We did work together on, it's a very arcane thing, it's called structured settlements. Nobody knows what that is. Essentially, it's he was put out because under the law, if you're convicted of a crime, your penalty is not deductible under the income tax code. And some people who were convicted of crimes were able to structure their settlements, and so they figured out a way to get their fine deductible, so they didn't have to pay income taxes on the fine. Well, that was all wrong, and that bothered John. It went against John's grain. So he came to me, and he came to another senator, Chuck Grassley, and said, "Max, you two are the top guys in this committee. This is wrong. You know, let's do something about this." And he was right. We commissioned something called the GAO to look into this, and they came back with a blistering study about how people have been avoiding the tax law, and they weren't paying the taxes they should have been paid. But a lot of that's because of John.
When you heard of his passing, was there a certain memory that came to mind for you?
Well, there was a couple. There were a couple, actually. John spoke his mind. John sometimes had a little bit of a temper. And to be honest, one time I walked up to him about something on the Senate floor. I've forgotten what it was. I just remember his reaction. Oh, he blew up at me. He had lost his temper. And I thought to myself, Max, what did you do to deserve this? My gosh, I didn't do anything wrong here. Oh, he was angry with me. And I could not figure out why. I kind of walked away, and I sat down next to another senator on the Senate floor, and I said, you know, that guy's not qualified to be president. He just flies off the handle too much. And the senator I was talking to said, boy, that's right. He does too much of that. Well, another time I talked to him, similar, and he got angry again. But then oh, Max, come back, come back. You could tell he was trying to get a hold of his temper. He was trying to do what's right. He apologized for both instances, and so he had his own firm views, sometimes a bit stubborn, but when presented with facts, he'd back off and say, no, I made a mistake, did the wrong thing. But he was passionate.
Last question then. Were you surprised by any of the comments that were made in that letter that he had read after his passing?
No, that's quintessential John. That's John McCain. Honor, duty, strive to serve your country, serve your state and the nation. It's just, he was so driven to public service for our country. And his honor, his code of honor, his badge of honor, it's a military code of honor. It was in his DNA, and that came through in the statement. He also was very touched, frankly, when he talked about his mistakes. He said, you know, I sometimes make a lot of mistakes. Well, we know we all do. But he was not above saying that he'd make a lot of mistakes, because too many people don't admit that they make mistakes. John did.
If you could, in just a couple words, describe his legacy.
It's going to be what public service should be. It's a noble pursuit, public service. It's honorable. And I'm hoping that people, when they think of John, see somebody who was honorable, who was honest, who said what he thought was right, and what he thought was right was, in his view, always for the public good. Not for personal gain or interest, but for the public good.
All right, Max Baucus, former Montana U.S. Senator and former ambassador to China. Thank you so much for your time.
You bet, Kevin. Thank you.